Hi, I'm Allison. I'm a reading specialist and I help parents whose kids are struggling with reading. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly what to do if your child doesn't want to read and won't practice. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, make sure to do that now and then also hit the little bell so that you're notified every time I post a brand new video. I do lots of videos to help parents whose kids are struggling with reading. So the first thing we want to do, and you may already have done this, is to dig in deeper to why your child doesn't want to read. Often, most likely, it's that reading is hard for them, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So if they say, I don't want to practice, or I hate reading, just ask them, say, tell me more about that, or what don't you like about it, or what feels hard about it, okay? Sometimes they have some really interesting insight that you can use to help make it a more pleasant experience for them. So there's that. And then you're also going to want to make sure that you acknowledge their feelings after you understand, of course, why they're feeling this way. Just acknowledge it and say, I hear you. Reading doesn't feel fun right now, or you don't want to read right now. The reason we're doing this is because the more you practice, the more you will enjoy reading and the easier it becomes. After we're done reading, you're going to get to go outside or have iPad time or, something appealing to them. So you still stick to, hey, we're going to practice, but you're also acknowledging their feelings and making sure that they really feel heard and that you understand where they're at right now. My second recommendation is to really focus on using shorter text with a child. Now, what is short will depend on what their skill level is. This is a pretty short passage for a child who is learning to read CVC, simple 3-letter words. You could also just have them read half of it. And then this is a passage for like a child who is learning to read blends. And again, you could only have them read half of it. But often what feels hard to a child is that there's just so much text, right? And so you could literally cover up with another sheet of paper some of the text, just have them read some in a sitting. A shorter text, though, can often feel so much less overwhelming than like a little chapter book, even if it's a very beginning chapter book. Or if you are having them read books, just say, we're only going to read to this sticky note and then we're going to be done. So often with kids that are struggling and don't want to read, it helps to reduce the amount of text that you're asking them to read. It'll feel less overwhelming. The other thing that has to do with the text is make sure that you have the right type of text. Often, especially with those beginning readers that you might find in the library or that you might purchase, if they're not labeled as decodable, they might have words that are way too advanced for the kids and they really would have no way of figuring it out other than by guessing or looking at the picture. So decodable text. Now, the ones that I'm showing you here are from Rising Readers. I'll include a link for that along with this, along in the caption. But these are designed where we give you, based upon the exact skills your child knows, we show you which text to use with them, and the texts are at a just right difficulty level. So they're not too hard, because if you're asking a child to read a text that's just way too hard, of course they're going to become frustrated and of course they're not going to want to read. So choosing the right kind of text for your child is really important. And, if you're in Rising Readers, we can guide you in that. If you are sending your child to school, you can ask the teacher what kind of text they should be reading, but decodables that are limited in what types of words are really important in helping kids feel successful with their reading and therefore want to read a little bit more. My next tip is to help your child choose texts that interest them as much as possible. Choice is a big motivator. And so sometimes when they're just learning to read, there's very limited text that they can read. So maybe it's hard to find a topic that really interests them. But as they get a little bit more advanced, they can help you perhaps choose books from the library to read on topics that they like. But there's other ways to incorporate choice too, right? They might get to choose, are they going to practice math or read first? Or are they going to go outside or read first? And then, you flip the order depending on what they choose. So you can incorporate choice, but the more that you can also incorporate the actual text and the topics that they're reading about, that is really powerful too. So building upon that concept of choice, something we want to keep in mind is that kids want to have as much control over their lives and their situation as possible. And that's a human thing. We as humans, we want control. We don't want to feel like things are just happening to us, right? So the more you can allow the child to choose, we're going to do things maybe in this order, or we're going to play this game versus this game, the better it is for them. And it's also important for them to know when it's time to practice reading. And I don't just mean by telling them, hey, it's time to practice reading. Maybe they're doing something else and you want to set a timer and you say, when this timer is up, we are going to practice reading, or we're going to read, this story together. Okay. So the more that you can kind of give them a heads up, and then when it's actually time to practice reading, the more you can say, oh, we're going to read, this, or we're going to do this, this, and this. Here's a little checklist. We'll check it off. Again, that's like helping them understand what's going on and giving them that feeling like they have a little bit more control and knowledge about what's happening. Another thing I want to talk about is rewards. Okay, now some people will say, oh, you shouldn't reward a child for reading. We want to develop that like intrinsic internal motivation, like they should want to read. And that's great if they want to read. I was that kid who was reading in the car and under the blanket with a flashlight and here, there, and everywhere, right? But not all kids are like that, especially if reading is difficult for them. So in my personal opinion, in my professional experience, it is okay to have some kind of reward. And it doesn't have to be that you're buying your kid a new toy every time they read, a paragraph or something, but maybe like, they are tallying up how many books they read. And then when they get to 5, they get to go to a park that they don't normally get to go to, or they get to have like 10 extra minutes of screen time. It doesn't have to be something wild and extravagant, but it is okay to include rewards, because what we've seen is that the easier reading becomes, which happens through practice, right? The more kids want to read. So their motivation might not be there initially. They may not want to read because reading is hard, but the more they practice, the easier it becomes and the more they want to read. Think about it like this. Would you want to do a hobby that is just super hard and not enjoyable every time? I mean, I know I wouldn't want to, right? There's a difference between like something that's like, oh, a little bit challenging and something that feels impossible. And for many kids that are struggling with reading, reading does feel impossible. So that's why it is okay to reward them a little bit. And then over time, you're hoping that their internal desire to read, their motivation will grow. But before that happens, typically they have to get a little bit better at reading. If you want more information on what this actually should look like what you can do with your child at home to help motivate them to read and kind of get over that hump of like the frustration and the I don't want to read, I have a free mini course. It's not very long, but it's packed with information. I will include a link along with the caption that you can check out. And then if you want access to a complete program where we give you all the texts and games and activities, that is Rising Readers, and it also includes coaching from me, and I will include a link to that program in the caption as well. But whether you grab the free mini course or join us in the program, I hope that all of this is helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe so that you don't miss out on any of the videos that I post, and I will see you in my next video.